Valley News Live at 4, I'm Bobby Fallat. We begin with breaking news for you at 4 as a state judge has struck down North Dakota's ban on abortion, saying that the state constitution creates a fundamental right to access abortion before a fetus is viable. In his ruling today, State District Judge Bruce Romanek also said that the law violates the state constitution because it is too vague. Under the judge's order, abortion would be legal in North Dakota, but the state currently has no clinics performing them. Now, the Republican-dominated state government is expected to appeal this ruling. Now, Romanek was ruling on a request from the state to dismiss a 2022 lawsuit filed against the ban by the Red River Women's Clinic, which is now in Moorhead. Romanek also cited how North Dakota's constitution guarantees, quote, inalienable rights, including life and liberty.
As we see at our clinic every day, pregnancy is complex, and each pregnant person knows what is best for their specific situation.